Muy buenos días a todos y todas. En nombre de Universidad Galileo y del proyecto EcoCred, les damos la más cordial bienvenida al webinar Fundamentos técnicos de las credenciales digitales. Agradecemos su participación desde distintos países de América Latina y Europa. Este espacio ha sido diseñado especialmente para educadores, personal técnico y profesionales del ámbito educativo interesados en comprender de manera clara y aplicada cómo funcionan las credenciales digitales. Durante esta sesión exploraremos los conceptos fundamentales detrás de estas credenciales, así como los diferentes tipos que existen, cómo se configuran sus ecosistemas y cuáles son los principales estándares y tecnologías que las sustentan. Durante el evento se estará compartiendo el enlace de asistencia necesario para obtener el diploma de participación, así que les recordamos que no olviden inscribirse. Este es el segundo webinar de una serie de eventos y los próximos ya están programados para el 25 de junio y 2 de julio a las 10 horas, para que puedan agendarlos y están cordialmente invitados a participar. Asimismo, les compartimos los enlaces a las redes sociales del proyecto para mantenerse informados de los próximos eventos. Este webinar forma parte también de una serie de actividades impulsadas por el proyecto EcoCred, un esfuerzo colaborativo financiado por el programa Erasmus+, que tiene como objetivo promover el desarrollo y la adopción de credenciales digitales en América Latina con un enfoque especial en su aplicabilidad técnica y pedagógica. A través de este espacio buscamos fomentar una comprensión común de los fundamentos técnicos necesarios para diseñar y gestionar credenciales digitales interoperables, confiables y centradas en el usuario. Hoy tenemos el privilegio de contar con 3 invitados desde la Universidad Tecnológica de Graz, Austria, quienes compartirán con nosotros sus conocimientos y experiencias en el desarrollo de credenciales digitales. Conozcámoslos un poco mejor ahora. Primero, Chiara Baumann. Ella es psicóloga e investigadora en aprendizaje digital, alfabetización digital y evaluación de entornos de aprendizaje. Karina Kern. Ella es psicóloga y socióloga, asistente de investigación en el área de credenciales digitales. También el señor Alexander Nussbaumer, doctor en informática, investigador postdoctoral y gestor de proyectos europeos en temas de tecnología educativa, ética, desde el diseño y sistemas centrados en el usuario. Las intervenciones de nuestros invitados serán en inglés, por lo que el equipo técnico estará habilitando subtítulos para facilitar la comprensión. Les invitamos a aprovechar esta oportunidad para interactuar y aprender desde una perspectiva europea avanzada en el campo de las credenciales digitales. Les recordamos que pueden ir dejando sus preguntas en el chat y al finalizar la intervención de los expertos les daremos lectura. A continuación, damos paso a nuestros invitados especiales. We now give the floor to our guest from Graz University of Technology. Welcome and thank you for being here with us today. The audience is ready to learn from your insights. Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you so much for this introduction, and hello and welcome also to our audience. I'm really glad that you're joining us today for this webinar on digital credentials. My name is Chiara Baumann, and also my colleagues are here today, Karina Kern and Alexander Nussbaumer. You heard this in the introduction. And before we dive into the content of today's webinar, I'd like to quickly show you a slide that I borrowed from a colleague from Fundación Quinal. He used it during a joint presentation we gave together in Graz this past May, and he wanted to show the audience just how far they had traveled to attend the event in Graz. Well, we didn't travel all the way to Guatemala this time. We're holding this webinar from Austria. It's already 6 p.m. here in Austria. And since none of us speak Spanish fluently, the webinar will be held in English, but with the option of Spanish subtitles. And this slide also illustrates how far we actually are apart, geographically speaking, and how wonderful it is that despite the distance, we're still able to connect with you and speak to you in this way today. So before we start, let me give you a brief overview of what we will cover in today's session. I will guide you through the first part of our webinar, where we will explore some basic concepts and definitions around digital credentials, and also talk about why the terminology can be so diverse and sometimes confusing in this context, and also which information you have to consider when it comes to issuing or also receiving a digital credential. Then we will explore the credentialing process itself, where Karina will talk about the broader ecosystem and the involved actors in this process. And from there, we will look at the most important formats and standards that enable interoperability, including the verifiable credentials framework from the World Wide Web Consortium and the widely adopted Open Badges standard. And after that, we will shift to some selected technological aspects behind digital credentials. And Alexander will take a closer look at digital signatures and digital credential management platforms here. We will also touch on how credentials are stored, both in centralized systems and more innovative decentralized models, such as blockchain-based solutions, for example. And finally, we will reserve about 10 minutes time for Q&A at the end of the session. So if you have any questions during the presentation, please also feel free to drop them in the chat, and we will try to address as many of them as we can in the end of our webinar. All right, so let's begin with a simple but important question. What exactly is a credential? According to the Oxford English Dictionary, credentials can either refer to documents that prove your identity or trustworthiness, for example, or to your qualifications or experience. So in the context of higher education and training, credentials are typically understood as documents issued by an authorized institution that certify that a person has achieved a certain level of knowledge, a skill, some kind of learning activity or learning outcome. And this can either be paper-based or digital. So digital credentials, in simple terms, are electronic representations of achievements, of skills, or of competencies. They can serve the same purpose as traditional physical paper documents, but they exist entirely in digital formats. So this digital nature is also what makes them powerful, because it allows credentials to be stored, to be shared, and verified using digital platforms. Let's now take a closer look at what a credential actually contains. Whether it's a paper document or a digital version, every credential includes certain core components that make it usable and trustworthy. And this, what you can see here, is a recommendation from the World Wide Web Consortium that goes with the following components. First, we need to identify who the credential is about. This is called the subject. For example, it could be a person's full name with a photograph, like on a student ID or a passport. It could be a customer number, something that makes it possible to identify someone. And the goal of these identifiers is that the credential can be linked clearly to one and only one individual. Next, we need to know who issued this credential. This is the authority backing the claims that are being made. And examples can include a city government that issues, for example, a driver's license, a certification body that awards a professional qualification, or also a university that issues a diploma. And the value of a credential depends heavily on the credibility of the issuing organization. Then we have the type. So what kind of credential is it? For example, is it a driver's license? Is it a health insurance card or a digital badge for completing a course, for example? This also helps to define the purpose and the context of usage for the credential. Now we come to the actual claims being made about the subject. These are the key facts that the issuer wants to assert. For example, that someone is a citizen of a certain country, that they are entitled to drive certain classes of vehicles, or that they completed a professional development course. These claims are the core of the credential's value, so very important. But how do we now know that these claims are true? So a strong credential will also include evidence on how it was derived. This could be a past assessment or an exam. It could be a course completion record, a verified document. So this evidence adds transparency and trust to the credential. And finally, a credential often has constraints, so some information about how and when it can be used. For instance, there could be an expiration date, like on a passport or a safety certificate. It could also be terms of use, like valid only for driving in European countries, or also revocation rules in case a credential becomes invalid. We also will talk about this later a little bit more. But this is just for credentials in general. And when it comes to the educational sector, there are even more specific recommendations. For example, here you can see one recommendation for creating micro-credentials from the European Union. I will not go into detail here, but you can see that they add even more core elements and details to the credential. For example, the specific learning outcomes, the workload and the time invested for the learners, and even more optional elements like, is there any grade that was achieved? Are there integration options or some prior requirement for even being able to get this credential? So there are some important things you have to keep in mind when you want to issue a digital credential, but also when you receive one. So which information is on this credential, because this information makes a difference when it comes to the trustworthiness of a digital credential as well. And since already now I used various terms like micro-credentials or badges or certificates. So before we look into the credentialing process and the underlying technologies, let's take a moment to clarify some terminology. Because in the field of digital credentials, there is one thing that becomes obvious very quickly. There are a lot of different terms in use, and they are also not always used consistently. Digital credentials are an emerging field. They are shaped by educational systems, by technology trends, policy frameworks, also private platforms. And each of these domains brings its own terminology, their definitions, and also expectations. So what counts as a micro-credential in one country might be called a badge in another. And what one company calls a digital certificate may technically also qualify as a verifiable credential. So to build a shared understanding, we will now look into these various terms and clarify what they mean and also how they relate to each other, because they are not always completely independent, but rather they share a lot of overlappings. And the goal is not to memorize every definition, to know every definition by heart, but to give you orientation and confidence when working with or when you want to select digital credential solutions. So here on this illustration, you can see on the left bottom side, we have macro credentials. Macro credentials are full-scale qualifications, like whole degrees. They represent extensive formal learning and are typically awarded by accredited institutions like universities. Then we have alternative credentials. Alternative credentials are kind of the opposite. They are non-traditional, non-degree credentials like MOOCs or short courses. They are used as alternatives to formal degrees like the macro credential, so kind of the opposite. Then next to macro credentials, you can see micro credentials. This is a term very often used, often heard. Micro credentials certify small focused units of learning. They are designed to be a fast and a practical way to upskill or to reskill, and they often address immediate needs in the labor market. Unlike traditional degrees, micro-credentials focus on particular specific areas of study and can be completed in a shorter amount of time. So not that much time the learners have to invest. So in this context, people often also talk about stackability, which means that micro-credentials can be combined or stacked to build larger and more comprehensive set of skills, such as a diploma or even a degree. So when you think of it like building blocks, where individual micro-credentials, the blocks can be combined in different ways to create larger structures. And this also allows the learner to customize their learning path and to gain recognition for smaller, focused achievements to contribute to their overall educational and career goals. Then we have nano-credentials. Out of all these terms, I think this probably would be the least common term. Nano-credentials are the smallest type of credential, often earned in hours or a few days. You might have also heard about nano degrees or nano degree programs in this context. It's a term introduced by Udacity, a private online educational provider. Nevertheless, in general, the term micro-credential seems to be much more common for describing short learning experiences, but there is also the term of nano-credentials, which would be even smaller learning units. Then we have digital badges, also very common. Digital badges are visual and shareable indicators of specific achievements. They often represent informal learning, also sometimes participation, so without any certain assessment. But it is not only a visual representation, but digital badges can include embedded metadata that explains what was learned, who issued the badge, and so on. So all the components I talked about earlier can also be included in a digital badge. These badges are easily shareable on social media or on other online platforms, and therefore they also provide a good way for individuals to showcase their skills on social media, for example. And another term that you can see on this slide is digital certificates. They often are more formal credentials that are issued after completing a course or a training at a university or in a professional context. Furthermore, in a technological context, digital certificates are an important technical term in the context of digital signatures. You will hear about this later from Alexander a little bit more. And another very important term, which we'll also hear a lot today, verifiable credentials. They are a special type of a digital credential that is designed to be secure, tamper evident, and instantly verifiable. That's the most important part. So a verifiable credential can be cryptographically verified to ensure it hasn't been tampered with and it doesn't require a central authority to confirm the authenticity of the credential. Alexander and Karina will tell us later more about how this works. So we will hear this term a lot today. But for now, it is important to know that nowadays, if someone wants to issue or to receive a digital credential, it should be verifiable. So it should be a verifiable credential. This is kind of state of the art in digital credentialing, since it offers a secure and efficient and trustworthy way to represent and verify achievements in the digital world. And like I mentioned before, it is not necessary to memorize all of these definitions, but it will help you if you want to issue credentials and when you receive them to look for the important information on the credential, because there are not only various terms, but like you can see on this slide, also various possibilities to visualize digital credentials. So they also don't look the same. Okay. Let's take a step back now and look at how digital credentials fit into the broader learning process. We can think of this journey as a structured process that often starts with a needs analysis. Which skills, knowledge, or competencies are required? These steps also involves understanding the goals of the learners, the market demands, or institutional priorities, for example. This forms the foundation for designing meaningful learning experiences. Let's say, for example, a company identifies that Many employees are now required to lead virtual online meetings and client presentations, but the employees report low confidence and poor results in their presentations. So there is a specific learning need to improve the online communication and presentation skills in a professional context. Based on these needs, we move into the development phase. Here, educational content is designed, learning outcomes are defined, appropriate formats and methods are selected, whether it's a course, a workshop, a micro-learning module. For our example, this could mean that the training department of the company, together with an external learning designer, creates a short and a targeted learning module called Effective Online Presentation Skills. This course, the course includes best practices, structured techniques, visual design methods, and so on. So tailored for the virtual business environments. The next step then would be the implementation. This is the actual delivery of the learning experience. And learners engage in the activity, they attend the sessions, they work through tasks, they participate in a collaborative or practical experience. And for our example, let's say this could mean that the course is delivered in a blended format. There are some self-paced online modules combined with 2 live webinars, and employees participate over the course of 2 weeks. Next, in education, we typically or often conduct an assessment. I say typically because in some cases there might be no detailed assessment when simply attending the activity may be enough. But in our example, the assessment is necessary for the employees to receive the credential afterwards. Assessments can involve quizzes, project, peer reviews, tests, other submissions, whatever is appropriate to measure whether the intended outcomes have been achieved or not. And in our example, let's say to complete the course and earn the digital credential, participants must submit a video or a short online presentation, complete a self-reflection questionnaire and a knowledge quiz. And participants who meet all assessment requirements then receive a micro-credential. This micro-credential has the title Effective Online Presentation Skills. The credential is issued by the company's learning department, and once the assessment confirms the achievement of learning outcomes, we enter the credentialing cycle. So to summarize, in education, this whole learning cycle is the basis for our credential. We need this information, but the credentialing cycle typically starts after the learning cycle. But it uses relevant information from the prior learning phases for the credentialing. For example, how much time was invested, what are the learning outcomes, and so on. So one could also say that the credential is the final and the portable output of a meaningful learning journey. And with that being said, I want to leave you to Karina, and she will talk a little bit more about the process of the credentialing cycle itself.
Dive right into the life cycle of a digital credential. Here you can see an illustration of all the roles and processes involved. In blue, you see the 3 core actors, the issuer, holder, and verifier, and colored in orange are the processes that a digital credential goes through. So each phase is tied to a specific role. A digital credential comes to life through the issuance by the issuer and lives on until it's revoked or deleted. Through its existence, it's getting stored and numerous times shared and verified. However, let us first look at the roles in more detail. There are the 3 core actors involved. So the issuer, the holder, and the verifier. The issuer asserts a claim about someone and creates a credential from these claims, and then he's responsible for issuing this credential. This could be, for example, a university in the context of educational courses, or an authority that issues a driver's license. The holder possesses and manages one or more credentials in their personal digital wallet and decides when and how to share it. This is most of the time an individual that earned the credential, or in the educational context specific, a learner. The verifier is mostly a third party that wants to check a certain claim. For example, an employer that wants to see if a job candidate has a specific degree. For that, the verifier checks the authenticity and integrity of the credential before accepting it as valid proof. Now let's look into each process of a digital credential ecosystem. I will do every process with the examples in an educational context. So as I already said, it all starts with the issuance of a credential. For that to happen, there has to be a learner. That learner takes part in a learning activity, for example, of a university, and through that course acquires a skill. Now the university is an accredited institution, and in this case, the issuer, seen in the blue house. The issuer now assesses or proves if the learner fulfills the requirements to earn a credential for the taken activity. This could be done by looking at positive test results, for example. If those are confirmed, then the issuer creates the digital credential and signs it with its digital signature, ensuring that it's valid and real and really made there and how it was claimed. Then this credential is issued to the learner, who becomes the holder of this credential. Once the holder has the credential, he or she stores it. This process allows the holder to access, organize, manage, and share his digital credential however he or she wishes. The best practice to do this is through a digital wallet, which you can think of like as a real wallet, but as a digital application or platform. It has a user-friendly interface, and the credentials are collected and sorted in it. It also ensures security and privacy of any information involving the credentials. The verification process ensures that other parties that get the credential shared know if it's legitimate and authentic. So if now, for example, the holder of a credential applies for a job and claims he has the needed degree for the position, the employer, who is the verifier, can ask for proof of this claim. The holder can now send a presentation or only parts of the relevant information of the digital credential that represents that claim. It's important to emphasize here that the holder has full control if and how much he or she wants to share. The verifier only sees information if the holder wants the verifier to see it. So if it's shared, so now the verifier can access the metadata of the sent credential and can verify its legitimization through specific technologies. Underlying this is a verification infrastructure involving specific cryptographic techniques, which Alexander will tell you in more detail later on. For all these processes to work between different countries, organizations, and still stay secure and authentic, specific standards have been developed. So, first, let's answer the question, what are web standards even? So they are agreements on how technologies should operate, like the usual way of doing things. Let's think about grocery shopping. Web standards, for example, make it possible that everyone can pay in a store regardless of the method. So regardless if it's a debit card or an iPhone you pay with or a Google Watch. Web standards are developed collaboratively by individuals and organizations and are open source, so everyone can use it and contribute to it. They are important in the context of digital credential because they ensure trust and transparency. That's because everyone understands the concepts the same way. By using standards for credential, they remain valid and recognized and are interoperable. One such web standard is the World Wide Web Consortium. It's an international public interest nonprofit organization that develops standards and guidelines for a wide variety of fields, from rendering web pages to linking data or authoring tools. They developed the standard for verifiable credential that Chiara already introduced. This standard can roughly be defined as a specific way to express a set of claims made by an issuer. Those verifiable credentials are used not only in education, but also in the health sector, for example, with prescriptions, or in regards of legal identity when we think about passports. The verifiable credential standard defines how credentials are structured, issued, verified, and shared. Through this standard, it makes the credentials machine readable and verifiable, as well as interoperable between servers if everyone uses this standard. The specification of the standards involves definitions and instructions on how to implement a whole credentialing ecosystem or just part of it, and also including the different technological aspects. Here you can see a code chunk which defines a verifiable credential. It consists of, in the upper part, of the claims made by the credential. So what, in the context of education, what achievement was made and when and how. Then there is the metadata, which are the short, most important information. And lastly, the proof in form of a digital signature. Another widely adopted standard are open badges, established by 1ED Tech. This is a standard format for issuing digital badges. It's intended for educational certification and is a digital token, a visual representation of an achievement. In early versions of the standard, it was held pretty simple, only defining the visual properties of the badge and the underlying metadata, which has basic information of the achievement embedded, which Chiara already listed. Like, for example, like issuer, expiration date, badge name, and so on. It was linked only to the holder's email address and dependent on the third party. So if the third party that issued it didn't exist anymore, then that was a problem. And those digital badges are possible to share with third parties and on social media, like LinkedIn, where it was used most of the time. However, there were a lot of developments in the last year. Now Open Badges version 3.0 was released, which is now compatible with the verifiable credentialing standards from W3C. So that means, for example, if a holder now has an open badge, it is possible for a third party that uses the verifiable credential standard to verify this open badge. It also makes open badges more secure and trustworthy because it now uses the digital signature instead of just email addresses. And it also makes them interoperable, portable, and machine readable. Thanks to those standards working together, it helps making digital credential recognized across continents and organizations. And now there's also the possibility to decide if you only want a QR code or a badge visual representation as well. So as I already mentioned, specific technologies play a key role in every process part of a digital credential ecosystem. And these technologies are also defined by the standards and very important in them. And Alexander will tell you now more about them.
So, hello, my name is Alexander Nussbaumer, and I will tell and explain some technical aspects of digital credentials. So, especially, I will talk about technical digital signatures and underlying concepts of digital signatures. And secondly, I will introduce digital credential management systems and how they can be used to organize. So starting with paper-based credentials, so the traditional way of creating and using credentials. So after a student has completed a course, for example, then the teacher or trainer will create a nicely designed credentials and signs it with a pen. Then the teacher gives the certificate, the paper, to the student. The student can store it at home, for example, and can bring it to an employer, for example, and then the employer can verify it manually. So there are two ways of verifying such a credential. First, the employer can have a closer look at the credential, what is written there, if it's written in an organized way, and if it sounds credible. But secondly, the employer can also just call or ask the institution that has issued this credential and ask if this credential is valid or not. So this, of course, this process is a bit complicated and time-consuming, and this is exactly where digital credentials are better for all of the stakeholders. So a digital credential, the first property of a digital credential is that this document is stored in a digital way, so in a PDF, for example, and the trainer or teacher creates it in a creates this digital document and signs it digitally. So we will have a closer look what exactly that digital signing means. So first of all, we can see here on the right side a visual representation of the signature, but this still can be faked. So this is not a real proof of a digital credential. So it's not verifiable just having the visual representation. So before going into detail, shortly explain this typical life cycle. So it's similar as before. So after completing a course, the trainer would issue such an digital credential and sends it to the student via email or in some other electronic way. And the student would store it on the computer or somewhere else. And then the student can send it via email to an employer, for example. And the verification could be done in a similar way as we have seen it before, but we can do it also in a better way. So if we have a closer look at digital signatures, we can see that there's also a hidden part of such digital credentials. So actually, the digital signature is more or less an hidden encrypted hash code of the document. So what does that mean? A hash code is a unique representation of all the data of the digital document. So there's an algorithm that creates out of the whole document, even if it's a very big document, a small number, maybe 1 kilobyte, 1000 bytes, for example. And this short number represents the document. And this short number is also unique. So two different documents would result in two different hash codes. So this is an important aspect, that we can represent each digital document with a short number. then the second step is, so first we create a hash code out of the digital document, and the second part is to encrypt the hash code, not the document, but just the hash code. And so how is this being done? So many people understand how to encrypt documents with a password. So for example, they use a password and they encrypt the document. And if they want to decrypt the document, they use the same password again. But in this case, we use a different method. It's called an asymmetric cryptographical method. So a person has two passwords, two keys, a private one and a public one. And the first one is used to encrypt the document, and the second one is used to decrypt the document. So in this step, to create an encrypted hash code, the signer, the issuer, uses his private key to encrypt the hash code. And then the encrypted hash code is edited to the digital document. So this is an additional additional data edited to the document, but people don't see it. So this is not available in a visual way. It's just available as data. So then the question is why do we do this? So the advantage of that is that we can use this to verify if the digital certificate is valid. So this figure explains how this verification is done. So it might be a bit complicated. So the first thing is to verify a document with an encrypted hash code, so a document with a digital signature, is to generate a hash code again. So the person who wants to check the validity, the integrity of the document, generates a hash code as it has been already done before. Then the second step is to use the encrypted hash code and decrypt it with the public key of the issuer. So this is the idea of private and public keys. The private key is stored privately, and the public key is made available for everybody. So the original person who has created the digital signature used the private key to encrypt the hash code, and now everybody can use the public key to decrypt the hash code. So this results in another hash code, and these two hash codes need to be the same. So because the original hash code has been created in the same way, it was just encrypted and now it's decrypted. So it must be the same as the hash code that the verifier has generated by him own in this moment. And if these two hash codes are the same, then the verifier knows that the document has not been changed. So the integrity is valid. This is important in order to prevent manipulation of digital certificates. So this is the first way that we wanted to prove. And the second question is, so what about the authenticity? So if a trainer signs a document, then how do we know that it was really this person who has signed it? It could be somebody else. So we need more technology to prove this authenticity. This is done by introducing a certificate authority. This is basically a digital platform that organizes user accounts. So different users can sign in and store their names, some personal information, and most importantly, their private and public keys. So this authority has they have this has both the private and the public key of the users. And if a person now wants to create a digital signature, the person A in this case, so this could be the trainer, first logs in to the certificate authority. Then he sends the document that should be signed digitally to this authority. Then the certificate authority now creates a certificate for this document. So this means that it signs it digitally using the private key of person A, the trainer. And in addition to that, it also adds further information, namely the public key of person A and a digital signature of itself, of the certificate authority. So now the question is, so if it comes to check to verify the digital certificate, so the first part is done in the same way. So the integrity check is just done in the same way as explained before. And the authenticity can verify it by first checking if the certificate authority is a trusted authority. This can be done so there are lists available with trusted certificate authorities. So this can be done by checking on this publicly available lists. And secondly, this certificate in the document also contains the name of the original signer. And since the authority is a trusted authority, it can be it's understood that this certificate is valid. So in this way, we can create a whole process of creating, signing, and verifying a digital credential. So this is not just it's a very high level concept, and it doesn't go into detail. The details are still much more complicated, but it's a process that exists in reality. So when looking into literature, this is known as public key infrastructure. So a public key infrastructure is a technical infrastructure that allows to create, manage, distribute, store, verify, and revoke digital certificates. So this is what we have seen just before. And sometimes it's also the same names are used for public key infrastructure and for certificate authority. So the certificate authority allows to bind public keys and private keys to given users, and it allows to store, issues, and signs digital certificates. So again, what I already explained, the digital certificate, so this is not the whole document. This is just the add-on, the additional information that allows to prove if the document is valid. So again, an example, I know this might be a bit complicated. So we start an example with a student who passes an exam. Then the teacher authenticates to the certificate authority of his university or of the government. So many governments or many countries already have such platforms. Then he sends the certificate to this platform, and the platform then signs this certificate with the private key of the teacher. And then the teacher sends this digitally signed certificate to the student. Then the student can use this signed digital certificate to use it in an employment process. For example, the employer can check the integrity and can check the authenticity. So this is an overall process how to create and verify digitally signed and verifiable digital credentials. So this whole process is still complicated, and this is why digital credential management platforms evolved. So these platforms help the user to make life much easier using, creating, managing digital credentials. So these platforms are mostly online systems with web interface and good user interface so that people can easily use the key functionalities. So the key functionalities are the design of credentials graphically, including all this required information that we have heard before from Chiara. Then secondly, the issuing and signing credentials. Then storing and sending credentials to other platforms. Importing credentials from other systems, then update and revoking credentials, and verifying credentials. So not all platforms have all these functionalities, but these are typical functionalities of such credential management platforms. So again, an example here. So as in the first step, a student completes a Moodle course at TU Graz, for example. Then this Moodle course the system is called iMOOCs, and iMOOCs is capable of issuing a digital credential. So the outcome is already a certificate that has been digitally signed. So this system is already there's already a certificate authority behind the system. Then if the student has done several courses on different systems, he might or she might have all the certificates on the same place. So in our example, the student then uploads the certificate to another system called Canvas Badge Europe. So this system is a kind of a wallet for digital credentials and allows to import other digital credentials. So since iMOOCs uses open badge format, it's easy to import it to Canvas Badges Europe. So you can see here a QR code, and this is a working QR code to just a demonstration or test credential. So Canvas Badges Europe allows to verify all the stored credentials. And if people want to verify the credential, they can just use this QR code, and then they get the information about the verification. In this case, it's a verified credential. So again, regarding digital credential management platforms, so I think it was clear that it's much easier to use such a platform. So mostly they allow seamless integration of the whole workflow of dealing with credentials. So they have, in many cases, an easy to use user interface. And the end users, the users don't need much technical knowledge about the digital signatures. And some of them can be integrated with learning management systems. So this was, as we have shown it in the example before. So the Canvas Badges Europe has the possibility to import data from iMOOCs, which is a learning management system. Basically, there are two types of such systems. So the centralized systems operated by one company or by an institution, and decentralized systems of connected platforms. So the problem with centralized platforms is that there's a dependency on such institutions or companies. So if you think of situations where a company goes bankrupt, or if there's a technical problem, a database crashes, or a cyber attack happens, then the credentials might get lost. And secondly, also the users have only limited control over their own data because the data and the certificates are stored on this platform. So an alternative solution would be a decentralized system based on distributed ledger technology. So blockchain, for example. So this would ensure that credentials cannot get lost, forgotten, or altered. And it allows independent verification, independent from specific institutions or companies or certificate authorities. So distributed ledger technology, it's not something new, but it became very popular in the last decade. So the principle of distributed ledger technology is that multiple nodes or computers, operators have equal access to the same network information. So the same information exists in parallel on all the connected nodes. One of the most prominent example of a distributed ledger technology is blockchain. So blockchain is a distributed ledger technology, but in addition to that, it stores data in connected blocks, so in chains of blocks. This is where the name is coming from. So every time a new piece of information is stored on the blockchain, a new block is created and edited to the existing chain of blocks at the end. So the chain is a list of blocks, and at the end, the new block is edited. And it is linked to the previous block. So no block is ever deleted or altered, just new blocks are edited. If something changes, then a new block is created with the information about these changes. So I show you a diagram about how blockchain technology works. So we can see here a network of 4 nodes. So a node is a participant in the blockchain. It can be a computer, an institution, a computer of an institution, or whatever. And each of the node has the same information. We can see here blocks of blockchains of 3 blocks, 1, 2, and 3. So this green rectangle. And each of the node has the same information stored. Now, if a new block should be edited, so for example, a person has achieved a new digital credential, then this block is being created and node A is asked to add this block to the chain. Then a very complex validation process is being done so that the new block is edited to the chains of all the nodes. So now each of the node has the same information again. So what happens if one node is being removed for some reason? Then the original information is still available. So in the case that node A was a certificate authority where a student has connected to an institution where a student has achieved a certificate, now this node is gone because this institution does not exist anymore, for example. Then this information that the student has achieved the digital credential is still available on the other nodes. So it can still be verified that the digital credential exists, even if this original institution does not exist anymore. So this is blockchain is more complicated as demonstrated here. So there's also the concept of distributed identity that is needed in order to relate the information to persons, but I don't go into the details here. So then the question would arise, so how to use such digital credential management platforms, how to set up and install this. there are two ways how to do this. So using an external provider. So at the moment, there are a lot of digital credential management platforms available. Some of them provide some free access. Others would ask for regular fees to use the services. But there's also the possibility to create an in-house solution. So maybe using the technology I've explained at the beginning of my part of the presentation. But this information, so more information on this will be presented in the next webinar in exactly 1 week on the 25th of June, given by Galileo University. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope I could explain some of the technological aspects. And if there are any questions, we would now be open and happy to answer them.
Muchas gracias a nuestros invitados por esta presentación tan completa y enriquecedora. Abrimos ahora un espacio breve para responder algunas preguntas del público. Vamos a dar inicio con las preguntas. Muy bien, tenemos por aquí la primera pregunta. Y nos dice de la siguiente manera: ¿existe alguna fuente confiable de credenciales digitales que recomendarían o quizás varias? ¿Existe algún referente o estándar que permita evaluar la credibilidad de las entidades que ofrecen estos servicios? So now we have the time for question and answer. And the first question is there a reliable source of digital credentials that you will recommend, or perhaps several? Is there any benchmark or standard to assess the credibility of the entities providing these services?
So may I try to answer this?
Yes, please.
So
Go ahead.
it's not an easy question. So there are a lot of different platforms, as I have shown. So I've just explained the principle of digital credential management systems. There are a lot of such platforms available, and actually I don't have a deeper knowledge which of them are reliable and which of them are not so reliable. So I don't have so much experience with this with these platforms. A very secure way would be to use official trusted authorities provided by governments. So, for example, in Europe, most of the countries provide an official certificate authority, and that can be used to digitally sign documents. So this is, in my opinion, one of the most trusted way of creating digital signatures and in this way digital certificates. And the second thing is so the in-house solution. If you create your own solution in your at your institution, then you can, of course, trust this solution. But as said, next week there will be more explanation how to create in-house solutions.
Thank you, Alexander. We're going to continue with the next question, okay? Vamos a continuar con la siguiente pregunta. Y esta dice así: ¿qué países están implementando este tipo de certificación? ¿Sería posible hacer lo mismo en Guatemala? Un cordial saludo y muchas gracias por su tiempo. The question says like this: Which countries are implementing this type of certification? Would it be possible to do the same in Guatemala? Best regards and thank you for your time.
So I try to answer.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know exactly where these platforms are available, so in which countries they operate. So since the platforms are on the internet, of course, you can use it in Guatemala without any problem. I don't know about trusted authorities in Guatemala, but so the goal of our project is to outline how this can be used in Guatemala. So we will, in our project EcoCred, we still have some 1.5 years to work, and we try to set up and to pilot a system that uses digital credentials in Guatemala.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, let's continue with the questions. We have question number 3 already, okay? I'm going to send it to you. Vamos a continuar. Tenemos la pregunta número 3 y esta dice, ¿saben cuál es el nivel de inversión o costo que una institución necesitaría asumir para implementar microcredenciales? The question says like this. Do you know the level of investment or cost an institution would need to incur to implement microcredentials?
I could try to answer this. Of course, it's a difficult question since in Austria it might be different than in Guatemala. But for example, if you think about the certificates, there might be certificates at your institution at this point. They might not be digital, but like traditional paper certificates. And for example, the credential that Alexander showed with Canvas badges, this was a good opportunity for us to make the digital credential without any cost for the institution. But of course, when it comes to the cost, it's not only about the credential itself, but about the learning process. So it's important to think about, do you need the learning process as well, or is it just the credentialing process? And there are very good offers, of course, also for the learning experiences, but I can't tell exactly how much that would cost for an institution. Also depends on how many people would have to get the credential and so on. But also for this question, maybe let's talk about the webinar for next week, because the colleagues from Universidad Galileo will talk about in-house solutions and also possible external providers. And these will also be possible for Guatemala, and maybe the question about the costs can be answered better by our colleagues from Guatemala.
Ok, thank you very much. Bueno, esta es una invitación para que la próxima semana ustedes también puedan acompañarnos en el siguiente webinar, donde se van a estar respondiendo algunas preguntas que el día de hoy estamos teniendo esas dudas, ¿verdad? Vamos a continuar con la pregunta número 4. Ok, we're going to continue with question number 4. Desde su perspectiva, ¿cuáles son las consideraciones más importantes al momento de decidir entre sistemas de credenciales digitales centralizados y descentralizados, especialmente para instituciones en países en desarrollo? From your perspective, what are the most important considerations for deciding between centralized and decentralized digital credential systems, especially for institutions in developing countries?
Okay, I think this is a question for me. So what we can say is that centralized credentialing systems are already available and commercialized. So the companies that offer these systems for commercial reasons. Decentralized systems are not so widely used, and there's still some technical development done for decentralized systems. So I think we have there's already more experience available with centralized systems, and maybe it's easier to start with centralized systems before switching to decentralized ones.
Okay. Thank you, Alexander. So let's continue with the questions. We have question number 5. Muy bien, seguimos avanzando con las preguntas. Tenemos ya la pregunta número 5 y esta nos dice, considerando los distintos tipos de credenciales, desde nano hasta macro, y los elementos técnicos y estructurales que han presentado, ¿cuáles consideran que son los principales desafíos para que las instituciones de América Latina puedan implementar credenciales digitales verificables dentro de los sistemas de educación formal? Okay, question number 5 says like this. Given the different types of credentials from nano to macro and the technical and structural elements you have outlined, what would you consider the key challenges for institutions in Latin America when trying to implement verifiable digital credentials within formal educational systems? So.
Okay, maybe I will try to answer this question. Just give me some seconds.
Thank you.
So I think if you want to be the first one or one of the first ones to implement something like this, this always comes with challenges and some difficulties. And I would say I would always say to start with the small things. So like the question also said, ranging from nano to macro credentials, I would start with the nano credentials. So not making the whole degree, like a bachelor's degree, a master's degree at a university with a digital credential, but maybe a smaller learning unit. And this could also be that a single teacher has some kind of evaluation in their class, or for example, they make a quiz at the end of a class, and the people get a participation badge for the quiz. So something like this to also make it more common in Guatemala, and this will be solutions that can be easily done, and you don't have to invest a lot of time for this, just to try out also different solutions. But like I said before, beginning with the small steps, and then the more common it gets, also for employers, for example, it will be easier with time to know where to look at and what are the important considerations and challenges that you have to consider as an institution.
Okay, thank you very much, Chiara. Let's continue with the next question, right? Question number 6. We only have 2 more questions. Muy bien, seguimos avanzando con las preguntas. Ya solo tenemos 2 preguntas más. Y la número 6 dice así. ¿Cuál es el procedimiento o qué se requiere hacer para que una universidad pueda emitir sus microcredenciales? What is the process or the necessary requirements for a university to issue its own microcredentials?
Okay, so I try to answer. So mainly this question addresses the next webinar where we will learn how to implement and how to use digital credential management systems. I can tell a bit about what our university in Graz is doing. So they use the certified authority of the government in order to digitally sign certificates. So this is the process that I explained in the first part of my presentation. So they create the digital document and then they digitally sign it with the authority of the government, and then they hand it over to the student. And this is a verifiable digital credential, even it's is not being done that smoothly as it's done in a platform. So this is a possible way how to do it and how to start. And if people want to do it better, then they can use an existing platform, maybe pay for the service, and use all the services to create, manage, store these verified digital credentials, or they can create their own in-house solution.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we go to the last question. Muy bien, ahora es tiempo para la última pregunta que tenemos preparada. Y esta dice así: debido a que en mi país no existe un ente certificador, ¿cómo puede una empresa comenzar un proceso de certificación bajo el modelo in-house? Para el inicio del proceso, ¿qué metodologías sugieren para levantar las competencias a certificar? Since there is no certifying body in my country, how can a company begin a certification process using an in-house model? At the beginning of the process, what methodologies do you recommend for identifying the competencies to be certified?
So I respond, but I'm sorry that I cannot really answer to that, how exactly this is created as an in-house solution. And I think it's much better to wait for the next webinar. And I'm happy that that there's already a need for this information, how to create in-house solution. So this will be explained in more detail in the next webinar.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Entonces, tenemos unas palabras, de despedida para nuestros speakers. En nombre de Universidad Galileo y del proyecto EcoCred, queremos expresar nuestro más sincero agradecimiento a nuestros distinguidos invitados de la Universidad Tecnológica de Graz por su valiosa participación en este webinar. Gracias, Chiara, Karina y Alexander, por compartir sus conocimientos, experiencias y reflexiones sobre un tema tan relevante como lo es el desarrollo e implementación de credenciales digitales. Su presentación ha sido sumamente enriquecedora y sin duda nos deja muchas ideas y perspectivas para seguir fortaleciendo nuestras capacidades técnicas en América Latina. Esperamos seguir colaborando en futuras iniciativas conjuntas. Ha sido un verdadero honor contar con ustedes. On behalf of University Galileo and the EcoCred project, we would like to express our deepest gratitude to our distinguished guest from Graz University of Technology for their valuable participation in today's webinar. Thank you, Chiara, Karina, and Alexander, for sharing your insights, experiences, and reflections on such a relevant topic as the development and implementation of digital credentials. Your presentation was truly enriching and has provided us with many ideas and perspectives to strengthen our technical capacity in Latin America. We look forward to future opportunities for collaboration. It has been a true honor to have you with us. Muy bien, para cerrar ya este evento, agradecemos a cada uno de ustedes que han participado con nosotros y esperamos que esta sesión haya sido útil para fortalecer sus conocimientos sobre credenciales digitales desde una perspectiva técnica. Les recordamos que se estará enviando diploma digital de participación a quienes se registraron previamente. Por favor, realícenlo y también los invitamos a seguir participando en los eventos que vienen ya dentro de una semana. Los invitamos a seguir conectados a nuestras próximas actividades y a visitar el sitio oficial del proyecto para más recursos y oportunidades de colaboración. Gracias nuevamente y hasta la próxima.